Hey, Stephen Yonda here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts with a 1995 Dodge Dakota V8. Now, if you don't remember, the Dodge Dakota was really kind of a land-breaking vehicle when it arrived in 1987. It was Dodge's right-sized pickup truck. That's how they marketed. Smaller than a full-size Ram, larger than a D50 Mitsubishi Ram, and of course the Ford Ranger, Chevy S10. This was larger than those. So the first mid-sized American pickup truck. And these were very popular vehicles built between 1987 and 2011 in 3 different generations. This one here is an example of the first gen of Dakota built between 87 and 1996. Now the V8 engine that we see right here was first available in 1989. The first couple of years you had nothing but a 4-cylinder or the 3.9 V6, which was basically 6 cylinders of the 318 V8. But again, this is the mighty 318 V8. Now, here's a catalog here for 1988 Dodge Dakota, a little bit earlier than this one, but same basic bones, the first gen, like I say, right here between 1987 and 1996. But in here we can see Dakota 2-wheel drive, and on the top left we see the various different engines possible. A little 4-banger, a V6, 3.9, and again, the 318 would arrive in 89. In the Shelby, and then as a regular option in 1990. And of course, yes, Dodge Shelby Dakotas, yup, they made them in 1989. Of course, for 1990, the 318 was available in any Dakota. Good looking trucks, available with an 8-foot bed or a 6.5, and that's 4-wheel drive. And that, I believe, is a 2-wheel driver right there. So the Dakota is a very flexible platform. And again, we see it right here is the 4-wheel driver there. Dakota Sport, and in here is an exploded view. Again, body on frame, just like a full-size Dodge pickup truck, but again, very much more maneuverable, and the stripper half-tonners right here. Great little trucks, but again, when the V8 arrived in 1990 as a regular production option, as we see right here, the Dakota became a bit of a muscle truck. Now, the 360 would arrive. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but with that said, this is the 318 right here, and it looks like a, sort of a basic V8 engine. And underneath the air cleaner, we see something here that's kind of weird. If you don't know, this is what we call a barrel ram. It's a 2-barrel Holley throttle body. And yeah, most people say, Holley, that's a hot rod part, right? Well, no, Holley was a big supplier to the OE, the original equipment, Ford, Chevy, GM, etc. And of course, Chrysler. Here it is, the Holley, the V8 size. We can see right there, it's a larger throttle body. But inside of this throttle body, we can see right here, we look down inside of that big old hole. Look at that hole down there, that massive inside. That's the plenum. Now, the runners actually are curled up in a barrel. If you stretch this out, it's basically a tunnel ram. The throttle body would be up here, and basically the ram tune effect in effect. Now, the bottom line of putting that into a barrel, it shrinks it down so you can close the hood over it. But again, the barrel ram is a double-edged sword. More on that in a second. But in the 318, a lot of power, especially in a half-ton 2-wheel drive like this with a stick. Now, this one here has the 6-lug wheels. These were 5-luggers from 87 through 90, but for 91 through 2004, 6 lugs were used. And ironically, in the 3rd generation, 05 to 011, they went back to 5 lugs. Kind of a weird little switcheroo there. But on this one, we can see one of the things that made the 2-wheel drive Dakota such a good handler, this rack and pinion steering. There's the rack right there. And again, rack and pinion, front suspension and steering was kind of quite an advent in the mid-1980s or 90s, in fact, usually seen on Mustangs and stuff like that, but it gave the Dakota 2-wheel drive. Excellent handling. The master cylinder, kind of an interesting thing, made of aluminum with a plastic reservoir on top, something that a lot of people swap from these into Dodge Darts and other Mopar race cars. And look at the linkage here between the steering column and the steering rack. Interesting couple of U-joints right there to package everything. Collapsible column right here and right there, so when it impacts you wouldn't get perforated by the steering wheel. Now, this is a 2-wheel drive. Keep in mind the 4-wheel drive would not have the rack and pinion steering. Now, inside this one is something kind of cool. A clutch pedal. This is a 5-speed manual V8 2-wheel drive Dakota pickup truck. One tire smoking monster if ever there was one. Here's the boot here for the 5-speed manual right there. Clutch pedal still in play. And we know this is a V8, not just something somebody slopped the motor in, because there's a Y in the 5th spot of the VIN. You can see it right there. Actually, the 8th spot, that Y tells us this is a factory 318 Dakota. Now, getting back to the Dakota 360 and the RT. The Dakota RT arrived in 1998, and I worked at Hot Rod magazine at the time. In fact, this is the August 1998 issue of Hot Rod. Who's that geek on the cover right there? I don't know, some kid who I used to look like. But inside this, here we have it. This is the story that myself and Terry McGeehan came up with. And in fact, I was tech editor at Hot Rod between August 19th, 1997 and January 20th, 2004. I did 77 issues. And one of the best parts was working and being able to do burnouts. That's me inside of this Dakota RT up at Palmdale drag strip, laying rubber. And here it is, you know, basically Scott Dahlquist, who was the great Eric Dahlquist's son, photographer. Eric Dahlquist, of course, was an editor at Motortrain and Carcraft for many years. But here it is, we have it here. Terry McGeehan, who now works for Hemmings Muscle Machine, says, the Dakota RT fills the pony car void at Chrysler. Remember, in 1998, the Challenger was still 20 years away. That arrived in 2008. So there was no rear-wheel drive platform to have fun with, so the truck was it. It says, take the lightest truck in the lineup, drop in a hot small block. Back in 78, Dodge put together a similar package to avoid the smog Nazis, since light trucks were held to a more lenient standard than passenger cars. The Little Red Express was the result. It was faster than the new Corvette or Trans Am. In fact, the Little Red truck was the fastest production vehicle built in America that year, which says a lot about the state of affairs back then. In fact, this truck here says a lot about the state of affairs. I don't think we got very good ETs. I think we ran like, I don't know, a 15.1 or 14.9. There we go. We got 14.9s. 1485 at 91 final. These are corrected numbers, by the way. Palmdale is such a high elevation, you have to do a little math. The NHRA allows it, but with that said, I think we saw 15.3, which is to say, you know, even this, which we thought was a big deal in 1998, was kind of weak, to be honest. Now we can buy 5.7 and 6.4 Hemi-powered Rams, even the TRX with a supercharged Hemi in a Dodge Ram pickup truck. How far we've come. But again, small steps along the way. Now, I got into a little bit of trouble, I got to say, a couple of years later. This is November 2000. I was still at Hot Rod. Again, I was there through January of 2005. And inside of this, we did a little story about a performance hop-up kit right here. But if you look at it, the title is called Kota. I got in some trouble over this. Too little, too late. And you can see, Ro McGonigal, my editor, says, we won't use your name, Steve, don't worry. So he put me as Steve Magnum RT. Thanks, Ro. I love Ro. He's a good guy, but he had some fun. Anyway, we took a brand new, basically, Dakota RT, baseline test, 191 horsepower. Well, Direct Connection, or Mopar Performance, I should say, was selling parts to perk it up. So we started with a cold air intake, and we gained 16 horsepower, and we put a catback exhaust, lost 4 horsepower, installed headers, gained 8 horsepower, kind of went back and forth with this thing, and then finally we did a high performance computer, and we gained 9 horsepower, and in a hot cam lost 10 horsepower. And again, this truck was owned by a factory tech who worked at Glendora Dodge, and these parts were supplied to us by Mopar Performance. So we did everything right, but we found out in the end, the reality was the fly in our grease seems to be the barrel ram intake manifold. Just the thing for lugging hefty payloads. This torque targeted truck manifold is not up to the task. We can see right there the inner guts. We just saw those a second ago. So this manifold is probably the cork that prevented all these expensive parts, like $4,000 worth of stuff, from blossoming and turning that Dakota RT into a 300 horsepower tire smoker. It didn't really add up. Crazy, but true. But with that said, I remember we went to SEMA right around the time that article came out, and the guys at Dodge didn't like me, and guys on the Dakota RT forum wanted to kill me. But you know, we only told the truth, and I learned a story or a lesson in that magazine article right there. If the advertiser or the supplier is not going to win, kill the story. But in this one here, we're on deadline. Ro McGonigal, my beloved and brave editor, said, you know what, run that story, F them. So anyway, that blew over, thankfully. And again, in 2008, we got the Hemi Challenger. 2005, of course, the 300 and the Magnum and the Charger. So, I mean, Dodge absolutely made up for it. But with that said, a little truck like this, 318-powered, 5-speed, rear-wheel drive Dakota was a fun little tire smoker in its day. And even now, these are coming on strong. Now, this, again, is the first generation. These are made between 87 and 96. This is the next to the last year for the first generation trucks. And again, here's the owner's manual right here, kind of a cool little thing. I like looking around for original stuff, and here's the owner's manual for the Dodge Dakota pickup truck. Let's take a peek here and see what we can learn. And here it has the owner's manual. Sometimes in the back of these things there's data on who bought it new, nothing. But again, here's just how to change light bulbs and a little bit of data right here. Kind of cool stuff. and warranty goodies in here. But again, this is a 5-speed, 2-wheel drive 318. So, you know, you could have had a little tiny 4-banger or the 3.9 V6, which is basically, you know, 6 cylinders of the LA V8. But again, a pretty advanced little truck. This one here, I think its days are probably over. Somebody's grabbed the transmission and the flywheel. Although the exhaust manifolds, we can see on this thing, they're pretty decent. You know, not a bad, it's a log, but again, we can see there's a bit of a streamlining effect here. So these were fairly potent little engines in their time. And the 360 with 250 horsepower with 5.9 liters was not bad. But again, that barrel ram right there, the 2-barrel Holley throttle body, was the cork. You can kind of do whatever you want underneath that, but that cork kind of has to go. So that's the story of the V8 5-speed Dakota 2-wheel drive in the junkyard. If you like this video, by all means, subscribe to the Steve Mag's YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up, share this with your friends, and hit the bell so you know when the next video hits, which is tomorrow morning.